One was, given that we've accepted payment from the Raceway, Guam Racing Federation, is it perceived as an acceptance or approval in the renewal of their license or the month-to-month extensions?
And I can answer that one right now. So that's an approval of a month-to-month extension. So if you accept the payment on the first of the month, that gives them that right of entry for the remainder of that month. But at the next one, if you decline it at the beginning of the next month, then that cuts off or that gives you the option to terminate the right of entry.
May I just get for further clarification, Mr. Chairman, on the invoice that was created? So there was an invoice prepared by CLTC, and I believe it was I understand it was prior to the instructions not to receive the rent. Nonetheless, on January 1st, I believe it was booked and sent. Is that a perception of another month of?
I would say so, just to be on the safe side, because because to whether it's when you cash the check or when you send out the invoice. So I would say for the month of January, just to play it safe, assume that is an agreement to extend that month to month for the extension through January.
And then with regards to payment, we did notify all of the staff not to receive rent for the month of January. However, the notice was sent out, so if that check is delivered, should that be accepted now that the invoice went out?
Because we're 2/3 of the way through January now. The invoice is for January. If you get a check for it, they've already been occupying it for 20 days out of the month already. Whatever decision you make today, rejecting the invoice, and it's up to the board, I think, because you can make a decision that begins on February 1st, and it's not a lot of money here that we're talking about, or you can decide to reject the check and reverse, yeah.
Okay. I think that's administratively we can figure it out. But yes, Commissioner Gordon?
Attorney John, the last payment we received from them was covering November.
Okay.
So they still haven't paid for
December or January. Okay.
I was thinking maybe we can give them a 30-day notice to clear up.
Yeah. Because it's month to month at this point. Yes.
Yeah, because the payment we received in November covered, or there was an arrears that then November, December, January, technically, so that's 3 months. Yeah, okay. That's not been paid. And I think, we haven't received any other checks, correct, Angie?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. Angie, you want to go to the?
Sure. Then the second question was, can the board terminate? Okay, I believe you answered that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then the third question was, CLTC would like to get a set of keys for the padlocks that restrict access to the raceway. Is that possible?
I think if you're doing a termination along with that notice, you do a request for the access, the keys, and then at the end of the expiration of that period, if they haven't provided it, then you go in with a locksmith and
Cool. So commissioners, those are some of the questions that we had. In your packets, we did have a copy of the statement based on what we have outstanding, inclusive of the January invoice, right?
I read it differently. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Sure.
I read it differently. The way I read it is they were in arrears 36,000. They paid us 32,000 in November.
Yes.
So, and to date now they're in arrears 12,000. according to this.
Correct, so 3 months in essence, yeah.
Yeah, they haven't paid us for the past 3 months, yeah.
Correct, yes, for the last 3 months.
Yeah.
So November, December, January. Yes, sir. Okay, thank you, sir. All right, so commissioners, I think, we do have also, right, that's outstanding, and I know that was printed, that was resent to Attorney General Doug Moyen, right? So it was initially sent to former Attorney General Leland Camacho, resent to Attorney General Doug Moyen, right? Is a packet from the speaker, right, with some clarifications on some of the actions that were taken by the board prior to us, right, regarding rights of entry, et cetera. So that's still an outstanding set of requests by the speaker's office. And then where we stand, right, as far as, I think, sans this, we still can make some decisions, right, in regards to how we want to proceed. The one thing I did want to, discuss again briefly is, there are, aside from everything that has been done on the other side of the raceway, right, all the extractions and clearing and all that good stuff, right, there is the other side in which there are a lot of community type of events and things like that that does happen up there, right, that is good for the community. But, when you really look at the net of it, right, there's just been a lot of gaps, questions unanswered, things that were done, i.e. Smith Bridge, right, and they're traversing. That kind of, that's some things that we gotta weigh, right, as a commission, and where do we take these next steps? We give them a 30-day notice. It does not mean that, it will resolve itself, right?
Yes, the notice is only for them to stop operations.
Right.
It doesn't resolve them from paying any penalties for what they did out of the norm.
Right.
Yeah.
Or even sets them up to get a new lease, right? Because in prior requests, right, they had other conditions in their lease that is not agreeable, right, for the trust. But also the term of the lease, right, is also outside of our approvals, right? So it's a longer process than we make a decision now and it will resolve itself in 30 days. It's definitely, I want to make sure that we're all kind of clear with that, right? And in the decisions that we will be that we decide to make today. So, and I'll turn it over to you guys. Any questions, or Attorney Toft, anything else to add? Commissioners, any other questions?
Well, I would
Discussion?
like to ask Attorney Toft, can you prepare the documents for
Yeah, I'll work with Joey to whatever decision is made by the, and Andy too, yeah.
and to start the prop going for, and in regard,
There's just no other word for it. We have no leases that use our current commercial rules because they're
I
unworkable.
saw the lease is like maybe 6 pages long on it.
Yeah, well, that's a legislative lease. That was created by the legislature, not the CLTC. It was imposed upon the CLTC. We have these 2 or 3, I would call them public purpose leases that don't necessarily benefit the CLTC beneficiaries. They benefit just the island as a whole. But CLTC has been put as the steward of these leases. And it's kind of a difficult position for us because the board is not supposed to be, doing things for the entirety of Guam. We're supposed to be working for our beneficiaries.
Mhm.
And so, and the commercial leases the commercial lease rules have no flexibility as to, if we have these leases that benefit everyone, who bears that cost. We have global recycling, we have the golf course, we have the raceway, and, they pay reduced amounts on these leases or licenses or holdover tenancies from older legislative leases. And, it's land that if the CLTC is pushing for, it could be used for housing for CLTC residents, for commercial leases that pay a full amount so that we can use that for infrastructure, things like that. So it's frustrating that the legislature has not made that distinction between commercial leases and public purpose leases. And as I said, the commercial leases, the lease length of 5 years is, nobody wants to build anything or lease anything for 5 years. There's just no return on it. And then the minimum price of 10% of the cost means that you're better off buying something else than paying an extortionate rate. So we have this unworkable problem, and then we go to them with the raceway lease. They parade 100 people around the legislative hearing, all in support of it, and then they pass a bill that is completely unworkable and send it to us. And then we look like we can't do anything because there's a bill that the raceway is unwilling to sign, that we're unwilling to sign, that, you know, we're just back to square one, and we've done this dance repeatedly. And, you know, if it takes closing it down to send a message to the legislature to get, to actually send us functional help, then maybe that's what we need to do.
Yes, because like you said, that was back in the 90s,
Yeah.
and there have been no revisions or upgrades to the.
They created the commercial rules and regs in 2015, I believe, but like I said, there's 2 provisions in there that just make it so that no one will ever bid on a commercial property that we own. And we've had RFPs out for 3 properties for a couple of years, and no bidders on that. And we can't use it for these public purpose leases because those companies can't function at the rates that a commercial rule and reg lease would demand. So we're just stuck in this impasse.
And so to that point, right, yes, commercial leases are not necessarily the top of the list, right? And we want to really work on our residential, hence, right, some of the resistance in really pushing out some of these commercial leases, right? Submerged land's obviously a different story, right? That's we can definitely we want those, right? In our inventory, but it is also the resistance on the commercial leases to that point, right? But it doesn't mean that the right leases can't come through for commercial, right? Because it will benefit the trust, it will benefit these beneficiaries if we do it the right way, right? And we can work hard to continue to work hard with the legislation or maybe some of the amendments to help us, right? To help us to be able to support even small infrastructure improvements for all our residential uses and agriculture. So, all right. So, commissioners, I know Commissioner Garrido, you have a time slot, and we do have.
No, I just got word that my hearing has been.
You're okay. Okay. All right. Cool. Commissioner Herrera, any questions or what would you like to put forth for some recommendations moving next steps for the raceway?
Well, the speaker sent out a letter, right, for the Attorney General to answer 5 plain items.
Right.
And we haven't received any response yet.
Not yet. Yes. And it was just now resent to the new.
That email I saw.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is that, for the last 20 years, we've been, like you said, we've been singing this song and we've been dancing this dance, right? And again, like you mentioned, that the interests that were here for us, for the constituents, not for the general public, but basically for the land trust beneficiaries that are eligible. And I'm new to this commission, and it was just in these last 6 months. But what I see is that other than the other operators operating at the lot 7160R1, right, which is the One Raceway Federation, we have shown, or we have found that there was other parallel operators that was going on. And here's my basic point, is that the One Raceway Federation was supposed to operate what they wanted to do in their operation. And it was basically annotated in the lease. But what we found is that there was a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of major damage to the property. from the excavation to the parallel operators that are operating under the One Raceway Federation. That's about 4 or 5 companies, and we have no knowledge, not to my understanding. I don't know if any of you has, you've been here for the last 6 years or so, and probably have more information than we do as commissioners, that the One Raceway Federation has engaged into contracts with other operators. Would that be a fair statement? Do you have the knowledge that?
I
Mr.
don't-
Chairman? I mean, you know, I don't know.
Yeah,
You probably understand this more than I do.
yeah. I apologize, I missed the last few weeks, but I was reading the notes from last hearing, and it sounded like there's the discovery of a subcontract between Smithbridge and Guam Raceway Federation that we weren't aware of.
Okay, that's just a month.
So-
That was just last month. But for the last 6 years that we've been sitting in this.
Right, we've had issues because they'll, you know, we're supposed to get a participation rent for events that happen on the property.
Participation rate.
And we've had instances where we know that there's an event going on and that they have a take at the gate or whatever. And we don't see it unless we specifically hound them and
Yes.
yeah. And have to do basically legal discovery to pry it out of them.
Okay, so, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, what is, do I have any?
Yeah, recommendations, your input, right?
Yeah.
Because you've definitely taken a lot of the work, to help us get to where we're at today, right? So, wanted to make sure we give you the opportunity as well now that what are our next steps? What do you feel is our next steps?
Well, Mr. Chairman, it's like for the CHamoru Commission to be treated fair and just in accordance to the public law and the mandates that were stipulated at the legislature for the last 20 years. You mentioned that no company would take a 5-year lease to get a return in investment. So they came up with a 20-year lease. So far we're good, right? So.
Well, not quite, because they haven't specified which one of those applies to us. It's because the 5-year one, I think, was passed later than the 21-year one, and there was no exception for the CHamoru Land Trust carved out. So if you're going hierarchy of laws analysis, we may be limited to that 5-year
To
lease.
still be at a 5.
That's why we haven't been pushing that boundary.
Understand, but the lease that we received from this table a couple of weeks ago was the 21-year lease,
Right.
correct? So we can say that supersedes the 5. So we're now engaged with the Guam Raceway Federation with the 20-year lease, and it expired at 2019. So the question from the Speaker's office is that the CHamoru Land Trust authorized the right of entry. The Speaker's question is that, are we within the parameter of the law to extend the rights of entry when the lease has expired?
Right.
My question, Mr. Chairman, to legal counsel is that fair and just, or is that legal to continue for us to extend a rights of entry when we have no authority to consummate a lease, which expired in 2019?
Right.
Now it's 2022, so we've been allowing them to enter the property.
We've been operating under the theory of a holdover tenancy. So if you're a landlord and you have somebody living in your house and they pay monthly and that 1 year expires, if they stay on and you accept payment from them, you don't have a lease in a traditional sense. You have this 30-day, month-to-month holdover tenancy where the same rules that you agreed to in the lease apply, but it's not, there's no permanency to the term. So with 30 days notice at that point, either party can decide to terminate the arrangement.
Either party?
Yeah.
Either party. Okay, so I believe, disrespectfully asking, you've been with this commission for the last 6 years,
Yes.
I can say. So my main concern here is the damage to the property. That's what we found out that when we were working in parallel with other companies, that's the major issue that I personally saw. So, on this motion summary that I'm reading here, the Raceway Park gave Phase 5A, Area 1, Zone A, which is 4 acres. So I haven't seen a master plan of this property. I don't know where is Area 1. I don't know where Zone 1 is. But I know that there's a quarry operation that was done. And it was a quarry operation, not a clearing and grubbing, because I did personally check the regulatory agencies that do the permitting process for clearing and grading. But these guys don't have any for quarry operation. And lot 7160-R1 was quarry. That's a fact. And again, I've been trying to get into the property to get a more accurate configuration of the quarry area of the property. And we were having a hard time even getting into the gate. That's number one. So my main concern is that, of course, I agree with the commissioner here to issue an eviction notice, but I would like to file a claim for the damage to that property. If the commission cannot do it, I would do it personally, because there's a major damage, and we've been, in my opinion, we've been exploited. The commission has been exploited, and you mentioned that with the legislature and us in the executive branch, it's like you have two conflicting policies. One is 5 years, legislature say 20, and like you said, if you have 100 bikers going around the legislature, and I've seen the checklist here, the people that came in to testify in favor of a 20-year lease, and what they were saying from back then, 20 years ago, was everything was profitable, everything was good for the community. Fast forward 22 years now. Where are we today? What have we paid? $4,000 a month for a 250-acre gold mine? Are we getting $4,000 a month for a 250-acre gold mine? The gold mine I'm talking about is the white gold that's under that property. What they did on top of the property is setting up their off-road. I'm a racer myself, and I'm a professional mechanic myself. That's my kind of hobby. My function here and my responsibility here is to protect the public law 12-226 and to administer the law in public law 35-112. And what I'm seeing just in the face value is that we've been swindled. I know I can spell the word swindle because we have not been treated fair and just on the situation that we're facing now. That's it, Mrs. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, so Commissioner Guerrero, please.
Attorney Top, is there anything preventing us from putting in escalation on these leases, the commercial leases?
Escalation in what way? On the amount of rent?
Yeah.
Yeah. The issue with that month-to-month holdover tenancy is that if you're adjusting the amounts of that.
Not on the month.
Okay.
On the
On a new
initial
lease.
On the initial lease.
On the initial lease.
Let's say Raceway came in, we terminated, they came in to apply
Right.
to lease the area again.
Mm-hmm.
Can we embed an escalation fee?
Yeah. The
Or are
issue,
we
yes.
restricted by the legislature from doing something that's proactive that would benefit CLTC? Because
No,
we don't get general fund money.
Right, and I think this is where that distinction between a public purpose lease and a commercial lease is really hitting us. Is that, you know, Raceway has come to us and said, we can't afford under the commercial rules and regs, because 250 acres, even if you value it at stupidly low, is gonna be far, far, far more than $4,000 a month. And with their current operations, there's no way that they're gonna be able to afford that. You know, they suggested the trade-off of selling the rock and providing profits to CLTC as the offset. The legislature, in their bill that they passed for the lease, explicitly forbade that. So we were kind of,
But they still went ahead and did it.
they said that they were clearing and grading, at least from this last few years. And then when we went in, they were going a little further than that.
Yes.
And that's always kind of been our issue with them, is that, you know,
And that was still a struggle.
yes.
What's our starting point and where our ending point was, right?
Yeah.
And what year to.
And finding this, you know, this deal with Smithbridge where they're getting money for, directly from them without us knowing about it.
Right.
Is, you know, I just reading this now, but I'm guessing that's a violation of the lease terms.
Yes.
Because we're supposed to know about all subleases.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's 1/8 of their costs, that their rental cost is being paid by that,
Subsidized by-
that subsidiary
And
sublease.
also, I'm sorry to interrupt,
Sure,
but also they initially submitted a master plan,
yes.
and they had X amount of years to complete the master plan, and they're way behind.
The master plan, a lot of it, when they submitted it, a lot of it was kind of contingent on the funding that they thought the clearing and grading was going to help out, that they would be able to sell some of the material from clearing and grading to pay for the different phases of their project. And what we're running into is that their definition of clearing and grading is closer to strip mining versus our definition, which is, you know, knock the trees off and then
And prepared for
flat, prepare it for, yeah, for your race paths or whatever.
Yeah.
So we need clarification from the legislature on that even before we move on to anything else, I think, you know, or at least as part of the lease, make it very explicit what's being allowed.
Yes, because in my first meeting here with the CLT, Smithbridge was here, and they attested that the agreement between Raceway and them was done over a handshake. Yeah, it's not supported by their lease.
And that's why, probably why we didn't find out about it. So.
And then to top it off, we don't even know for a fact what the Raceway was receiving from Smithbridge, because we're supposed to get like a little royalty from them, right? Based on their profits.
And that's if we approved the sublease,
Yeah.
which
But we
I
never did.
don't believe we did, no.
No, there's nothing in black
We
and white.
just found that out.
And I kind of find it hard to believe that all of that was done without some document, especially from Smithbridge, because they would want to protect their interests.
I would actually believe it.
If I remember correctly, though, it was an invoice that was the document
Okay.
sent to Smithbridge, and I believe that the payment was based on an invoice.
Okay.
But anything else from that, I'm not sure, nothing was mentioned.
So in just kind of rounding out the conversation, right? I mean, I know I've been on for just over 2 years, and you know, the Raceway's attorney talk knows it's always come up, and then it'll fizzle out to other things, and you know, but I think now is the time to you know, make a decision and let now we need to make the official motions, right, and then decisions with the commission. What I was going to say is, in addition to that, right, is that you know, legislation is not necessarily going to handle another lease for the Raceway, because I feel that, you know, at this point, after so many time lapses with all the extensions and et cetera, right, there's no more first right of refusal in that sense, right, because there's some mention to that. We begin from square one and go out for bid, right? I mean, in just kind of understanding how the process goes, right? And is that even the route we want to go, right? But at the juncture, what we needed to make is, what are our next steps, right? So that we can start the process.
Well, you know, the Raceway subleases to these other organizations.
Yeah, and
They might want to step up and just get a lease for that portion that they're using.
Well, I think the problem that we have up there is that the highest and best use of the land is the quarrying, which is forbidden. So the amount of bidders that you're gonna get for a 250
Yeah, but that
acre
happened
piece of land up there, and especially if we're going under the commercial,
to a agreement with Raceway,
yeah,
and everything is so shabby,
yeah.
you know, they're not being upfront with us, and I think we need to,
I think it's beyond CHamoru Land Trust's ability to move forward with any sort of feasible lease
Right.
in any fashion, whether it's Raceway or a different company.
yeah, but even if Raceway were to come back to us, like I said, the assurances that this was their master plan and they
Yeah.
had X amount of years to complete it fell short.
We already know that they can't afford the commercial, they've
Yeah.
told us,
So
they can't afford
if
commercial
we
real
were to
estate.
put it out for
Right.
a lease or a request for bids,
Yeah,
so
we
it's gotta
can
be in a downsized version, it can't be the entire 200 some acres.
to split it up. I think the problem you run into there is that, like I said earlier, our commercial rules and regs make it such that nobody is bidding on them. And I think even if we split it up into feasible chunks, they're just kind of poison, honestly. Like, we've talked to different companies and nobody's bidding on them because if you're paying 10% of the land's cost every year, you're better off buying a piece of land somewhere than, and if your term of years is limited,
But
whether
they
it's
won't-
5, whether it's 20, you know, how are you gonna get your investment back if you build something on it?
They won't be able to find land that big, that they can buy for that purpose.
Right. I think there's a lot of moving parts when
Yeah,
we think of,
there's
of,
pluses and minuses
yeah.
to both sides.
yeah, of post, whatever you're gonna do post our decision we make today.
Mhm.
I think there's still a lot of this, some discovery work of what's even, what are our options.
I agree, discovery is first and foremost.
Yeah, so in that sense, right, is, what is our immediate decision today, for the Raceway Parkway? And then we will move, what are the next steps, now that we've given them the notice, right? And now we avail back our property, right? Then we need to decide, what is the best next steps after that, right? And again, it's, you know, you give them a 30 days notice, nothing will cure that in such a short period of time, in my opinion, so. But yeah, I think what we do after, that's a lot, you know, that's a whole another discussion, I think is, what are we ready to do? What are the commissioners ready to do today for the, you know, the immediate next steps?
Just as a kind of not a warning, but just as precaution, that if you do an eviction, that you can't go back to that month to month tenancy, that 4,000 a month.
We're stopping it.
It's stopping
Yeah.
everything and it
Yes.
can't be restarted after that.
Yeah, it would take a new,
It would take a new lease,
Yeah.
either through the legislature or
Or
however we may
however
proceed
we
post.
proceed, yes. Yeah, that, I mean, I think that 4,000 is not necessarily something that the commissioners blinked at in that sense, right? Because, again, we've gone through this, we've been, you know, numerous asks and requests time and time again. I think it's time we have to make a decision, and whatever that decision is, that we are, you know, we are comfortable in moving on with what are those next steps, right? So after we make that decision today, so. Commissioner Herrera or Commissioner Guido, you wanna, you know, what is your recommendation to take action?
So I'd like to make a motion
Okay.
to start the formulation of the languages for the eviction notice.
termination.
Starting today. And then we'll digest or see what happens in the next 30 days. That would be my motion.
Okay. May I ask a question on what is your proposed effective date? Since we did send out an invoice, right, we may not accept payment.
Oh,
Um,
for the arrears of the.
No, not for the arrears, just for, because we did send out the invoice effective, or for January. So what effective date, for this notice do you want to put on there? Is it,
January 19th,
so for 30 days from today?
yes, sir.
Okay.
If our legal counsel has the,
Or any,
do you have a template?
I don't have a template. I would suggest maybe making February 1st be, just for ease of clarification on it.
You know, these guys
And then we
are-
can get it approved by the board and signed and then delivered, because we have to serve them as well.
30 days. I mean, February, that's 15 days, right? About,
Every March
Oh,
2nd or 3rd.
So
If they're served on the 1st of February, it's a 30-day.
we can serve them early. I mean, ideally you serve them so that there's sufficient time that you don't fall afoul of any procedural rule problems.
So if that's the case, we'll go with his recommendation of as soon as possible.
yeah, like tomorrow. No, seriously, these guys are, it's insulting for us as
No,
landlords.
understood.
right?
No, understood,
I'm
Commissioner.
not deserving, I'm the landlord, may I come in?
yes, no, exactly,
And
exactly,
then
so,
to check the damages that you have to remove the sink.
Well,
Actually, I wanted to ask
Actually,
Attorney Tom.
Commissioner Herrera, that's the tenant's right.
Understand,
You have to give them advance
I understand the
notice for
red
entry.
tape already, so.
no, but what we can do, right, we wanna make sure we gain access, we make sure that our staff has access to monitor between whatever dates we put into play, but also be reasonable to Commissioner.
I understand about those,
Yeah, and then maybe Attorney Todd can recommend dates where effective, when we deliver and 45 days out.
yes, our good attorney's leaving, I think, tomorrow, right? Or
No,
No,
next week.
we still have time, we
Yeah,
still have
We
time.
still have time.
You're going to NAFAC, regional,
We still have time,
I'm a former worker for NAFAC, so congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so we still have time, Commissioner Herrera, to work through this, and we can get his guidance on what.
They've been reasonable to us.
I understand,
They've been reasonable
No,
to
I-
us for the last 20 years.
yes, I understand, sir, but there's also,
We see our position, sir.
well, it's everyone, it's all our position, I'm not disagreeing, but what I'm saying is that we gotta give ample time, and if it's 30 days, it's 30 days, if we decide on 30 days, but let's get some guidance as far as dates, and then if we're firm on 30, then we're firm on 30. I'm not gonna, but I wanna also,
I just
Commissioner
want to
Garrido's point.
assert, because I'm sure that the attorney will agree with me, there's a term called quiet enjoyment for the tenant, where a landlord cannot just come in at any time of the day or the night to do like a site inspection. It has to be prearranged, at least on the residential market side.
I can't imagine it would be any different, so.
Yeah.
I would-
So we wanna make sure, again, I understand,
We have to
Commissioner Herrera,
operate
I really do, but there's other pieces to the, to be, in accordance with, those types of laws, of course, with tenant and landlord, but also with, making sure that we just give them that ample time, right? And if we wanna be tight about it, we be tight about it, and then we also then have, regularly scheduled inspections that we say, hey, we're coming every day at 12 o'clock, and they have to accommodate that, right? So, I'm not,
Understand.
I'm not going, I fully agree, yeah.
Because I really want to add in the damages that was done to the property. That's my primary core interest.
Yes, and I think that one,
Eviction is just the.
right, and I think that one is, we want to do an assessment, right? And whatever that assessment may be, so that we can actually ensure that those assessments that are made independently, right, that we can really account for what those damages are, right? From an independent assessment of what we think is the areas to assess for damage. I think that is definitely a step that we could take as a board to work with, whoever is recommended to do those studies.
I was
Thank you, sir.
But I would not say no to requesting in our letter to them
Right.
to give us the keys so
Yes.
we can access. If they say no, then say maybe, you know, that's it, but they have their rights also as tenants.
I know, I know there's a,
I don't have a lease right now,
right,
and not during arrears, so.
yeah. So let's, I'm gonna turn it to Attorney Toff real quick, just to
Okay.
kind of walk us through some of the recommendations that we should take in light of a date and how many days, et cetera.
Right. I would suggest doing a 30-day notice. We can prepare it now, date it for February 1st, so that they have 1 month to clear operations. We can, in that request, also include that we would like to inspect the premises, give them the dates and times that we would like to do so, at least 24 hours out from the date that we make the request. And then also request copies of the keys for the gate.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions?
In the document you're preparing for the eviction, are we also going to tell them to stop all interactions with, in this case, I'll say Smith Ridge, because they're the ones that are most visual there for extracting material?
That's up to the board. If you want to include that, we can.
Well, we,
Yes, because that's not a legal contract.
yeah, we have a cease and desist, so they're not doing anything on our property. We've also cease and desist for the traversing between our property and the private property. So I think we're covered there.
We've already done that.
Yeah, we've done that already.
Have they abided to it? We don't know.
I check and they are.
So, I know that the staff has gone up. I know maybe Commissioner Herrera, you've also gone up to the property, I think, and I believe,
They have closed the gates.
yeah,
so-
I believe nothing has
No,
been,
but closing the gate doesn't mean that they're not.
Understand?
yeah, but,
Because we cannot traverse.
because we can't go the other way, yeah,
Because I've been to the property with,
right. But I think it's more on the Smith Bridge side, we've told them they can no longer operate.
You're right.
Okay, all right, I turn to you.
Okay, that's it, I just make the motion and.
Okay, so if you can just restate the motion, that will help kind of,
Help me on this, so.
Okay, so I-
Go ahead.
yeah, so with Attorney Topp's guidance is, the dates, right, is effective February 1st, with 30-day time frame, for, I guess, eviction from the property, right? And it will be delivered, by Monday, I believe it is.
Yeah, well, I think we can prepare it today,
Okay.
have you review it, have the director review it and sign.
Okay, and then, we'll get it delivered to include, copies of the keys, and then also that, with it that we will give a 24-hour request notice, right, to be able to access the property. Okay. Andy, anything else?
Should we just say beginning such and such date, we will do
not that,
regularly scheduled inspections, something to that effect, so that.
but we're not sure. I think if we just go with 24 hours.
Just
Notice.
provide notice that we're gonna request inspection dates with giving them 24 hours notice before
Before we go on.
before we enter.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the legal terms we need. Because we don't know whether we want to go up there middle of next week or what, we don't know.
Right.
But if we are going to do something, we'll just give them the 24.
Okay. Okay, all right, so I guess Commissioner Herrera, that's kind of the, just some guidance, and then we can make the motion.
So in general, I'm gonna make a motion to start the process to formulate the eviction notice with the stipulated requirements and to be issued on February 1st, 2023.
No, it will begin,
For the 30-day process
Yeah,
to begin.
right.
it can be issued before that.
Yes,
Right, but effective February
First.
1st,
Yes.
2023.
yes.
For 30 days.
Okay, Thank you, Commissioner. Tina, are you good with that? Okay, thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Guerrero. Any objections?
No.
Okay, hearing none. The motion passes to begin the process of the eviction of the Guam Raceway effective February 1st with a 30-day window to include the stipulations of the keys as well as providing notice for inspections.
Attorney Tad, good talk. Jeff Cook has put notice that he will be representing them. We will have to serve him.
Yes.
Yes, it will be directly to the office of Congressman
Yes.
Cook, yes.
So I have a question. Would this motion also include like their activities, like their gatherings, their weekend gatherings on the Raceway between now and then? Or no? I'm just asking.
They would still be allowed to conduct operations until the date of, that we've told them to vacate by.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think Attorney Hall will have that drafted. Okay, Commissioners, I know this was, tough decision to make, right, given, but knowing the history, so I appreciate the dialogue. And, I know a lot of us has had time to think about this. Commissioner Herrera has been very actively, making those visits, so I appreciate again your efforts, sir, on kind of getting us to this point. Now, our next steps, we need to decide that, right? And we can take that up in our next meeting. So I will move on to our next item on the agenda. Yes, are we okay with that? Okay. Okay, new business. I'm gonna turn it over to Angie on the Guam Memorial Hospital on their request.
So, in your packet is a letter from Lillian Posadas, who's the hospital administrator. They're requesting for use of some property that belongs to CLTC, so that, for parking purposes, and in the request, it includes clearing limestone, foliage, to pave the parking. And they are requesting to improve. They will apply for clearing, grubbing/paving the grounds and unpaved areas. They'll be responsible for A&E, architect and engineer assessment, and design services. It's something that they're requesting and we're presenting to the board for consideration. I don't think we're asking for any motions or approval at this point because we would like some time to do some discovery
Yes.
on the request and have more information to present to the board.
So, maybe someone who's better at looking at the map. So 5172-1-1 is what they've mentioned. So where I don't see that on the map.
Yeah, the map.
The map doesn't have it.
show yeah.
Okay,
I think it's the.
is it,
That's
But
why I
based-
was.
Based on the
it's the
description,
actual
it's
map.
where the ambulance go up
okay,
to the
around the
ER.
back?
You see that one corner there where
Yes.
you usually have these snack wagons and
Right.
stuff? I believe that's the property
That's right.
you're referring to. And if you look at the map here, it's this part,
Got it.
it's this part.
Hey Pierce, so we have just something that was printed or attached to the letter. Do you have a view of that? 5172-1-1?
See, the map they gave us didn't show.
Yes, it
much
had it.
about
So let's
the-
go see if Pierce can pull that
We
up for
talked
us.
about.
You want the survey map, right?
Yeah, just to kind of see what, from where the hospital is today and where's the property that they're looking at. AT, could you make that? Okay. Commissioners, if you turn to the screen. Hey, sir.
If not, how can we magnify?
can go to the.
Okay, okay.
I'm gonna go up there, because I can't see it.
I think, yes, here's what I have to do next time.
So it looks like a
It
legal
looks like
description is the hospital.
the entire hospital site
Yeah.
for 5172
I wanna, try to get a full screen here.
Okay. -1, so that lock on here.
I didn't see-
So on your color copy, it's everything, so, north of the hospital, outside of the white areas there,
Okay,
those white, so
that whole section.
this
Yes.
whole section, yeah.
Yes, that was my,
So it's not
Understanding.
10173?
No, it's underneath that.
Oh,
So everything adjacent to the hospital on that north end,
okay.
all the way out to the coastline when it goes in between the yellow and the white there,
Mhm.
and then extending east, just to, let's see. It doesn't quite include the stretch along the Duenas Road there. Darts, I'll come over to your map and help you out here.
So it's a number
So
of lot.
it cuts off right about,
Is that your picture, right? No, no, I'm sharing it. Oh, you're sharing it, okay. This is the one right next to the hospital, right? Isn't it supposed to be the?
So we'll share with them the maps that we have and then sit down with them specifically, what area that,
how much of it they're
Yeah.
interested in paving. Yeah.
So I think, there's really, it was added to our agenda, just to be aware, right? There's really nothing that, we need to decide, because there's still some discovery that needs to be done, how much, what are even our options, can we even, what options to, I don't know if we wanna lease it, or, we'll have to get all those details squared away.
and then are we even allowed to authorize, do they need legislation for going down that road again? Clearing, grubbing?
On the back side of the hospital there, the back part of that lot is at a much higher elevation.
Yeah, there's a hill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
there's
my guess
room.
would be that they're requesting to
Level it.
level it.
Yeah.
So are we, is the board allowed to authorize that kind of activity to remove the limestone?
It's technically clearing and grading.
That's what I'm
Again, we get
asking.
this
Do
gray
they
area
need
between.
legislation is,
For clearing and grading, I don't think so. For quarrying, it's not allowed at all.
so this is not considered quarrying?
No.
So here's what we'll do, commissioners, I think one of the, again, I just wanted to make sure that, we're aware that this has come through. I've asked Angie if we can take this and just do a little bit more discovery, what exactly needs to be done, what is allowed, what can't we do. And then we'll get a report back, in our next meeting in February. Okay, so just wanted to bring that up, and then you guys have this in your documents and kind of take a look at it further. And we'll see what we can gather from our next meeting. Okay, with that said, that's basically the two items on our agenda. I know our next meeting, we will have a lot more to go through. But I want to now just turn it over to Angie for some of the agency reports. And I'll let her kind of do all the news breaking announcements.
Okay, so, the first item, CLTC is requesting to meet with DPW Director and Deputy Director in the coming weeks for the design and create website. That is progressing. We got notice yesterday, and so it's coming along. I'm hopeful that the RFP and all of that will be issued soon. The third item to present to the board, CLTC received notice from Attorney Todd that he'll be leaving the office of the Attorney General. He accepted a position with the federal government, and his last date will be January 27th.
Oh, so you're not here for the party, huh?
Is that a bigger project?
And we'll just await for the AG's office to send us who will be representing CLTC.
Okay.
That should come shortly. Then CLTC is still in the process of filling vacancies. We've had several qualified people decline interviews and offers for various reasons. We will continue to work with DOE to fill these positions. I believe we will have a lab agent on staff in the near future, so
Okay.
it's
Slow,
slowly,
yeah.
but surely
Yeah.
coming.
So just to kind of get Commissioner Green up to speed, right, we began the process to hire more land agents. We're breaking out administrative with compliance, right, so we can kind of really beef up the staff as we begin issuing out the new residential leases, going out to the agriculture properties and making sure that they're, in accordance to their lease and expectations. So it's been slow, right, but a lot of that is part of our strategic plan to get our staff beefed up as well. So, and then Angie, I'll kind of bridge the last piece. Okay.
One more thing. So, we received the ROE for lot 7146,
Oh,
and this is, so we have the actual,
Out there, I believe they should be issued safety shoes, a vest, and a hard hat, at least those 3 items.
okay. The kind of the safety vest, right?
Yes, yes, and identifying CLTC,
Okay.
so that they don't get shot at when they're out there traversing property on an inspection.
Got it. Okay, we can definitely add that to our list to see what we need to
Yeah,
meet those
because
procurements.
they need something, and it should not be up to them to provide it for themselves, since they're in an official capacity, we should provide it for them.
Okay, understood. Okay, anything else, sir?
Just the regular orange vest, so they
To
can.
make sure that they can be seen, right?
Bulletproof don't take care of high power.
Well, they do go to the swamp roads.
Okay, thank you, Angie. Anything else? Okay, all right, and lastly, from the agency side, we did receive notice that we have, the governor has appointed a new administrative director for the Toronto Land Trust. And Angie will be relinquished of her role as acting. We definitely thank her for all the work that she's done. But my ask with the transition is that our incoming, and she's here with us today, Alice Tyron, sitting there on the corner, so she has been appointed by the governor. But my ask for this period between now and our next meeting is for Angie to work with Alice on transition items, for Alice to work with the team to meet one-on-one as well as with the team, and then also for years taking the helm, and then also obviously swivel chairing and keeping me very busy. So.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you. But I did want to also let you know that I've gotten permission from Guam Housing Corporation to assist in the transition.
Okay.
So if Alice calls for any reason or needs anything, I'll be available.
Okay. All right, and then on our agenda next week, or I'm sorry, next month, will be to officially hire or officially confirm Alice as our director. So we have this 1 month period for her to meet with us individually, and then of course with the staff as well. Okay, and then of course lastly, attorneys off, thank you. My past few years for all your help, for your support with the staff. I know juggling 3 agencies wasn't easy, but we appreciate everything that you, so that will be on our next meeting.
I know the,
Mr.
Most
Chairman,
certainly.
now I think we need to address it in the order that it's come in, so whether it's residential or agriculture.
Understood, yes,
So
I'm
there
sorry,
will be a
yes.
blend
Yeah.
of both.
Because it's as they come in, yes, sorry, that was for you.
and maybe when we start going into the development phase, that we invite your cousin to attend our meeting,
Yes.
Carlos.
Oh, so we need to do an RFP, we have to work with who bids, and I think maybe after that point, we can get some, he may want to bid, I don't know.
But yeah, it's gonna go
It's
through the
kind of-
bid process,
yeah.
we've had some unsolicited interest, right, so we know that there's some interest in that, so yes, we would
Because
definitely.
Carlos has done a lot of these type of development project, the Ironwood.
Right.
Right.
He's been overseeing all of that.
So the
Getting
RFP is
the
for,
grants, government grants to
Right,
do.
in addition to that, right, yeah.
the RFP is for a developer.
Yeah, so we're gonna work to that, we did have a meeting scheduled, but I was also going to send a note to the director and deputy, that, you know, this is a high priority and we would like to meet with. Okay.
Yes, because if we put in the infrastructure, we can cut down the residential sizes to
Quarter acres, yeah.
Or smaller.
Yeah,
Okay. All right, anything else, commissioners?
no.
Okay, thank you so much. And then lastly on our agenda is some of the public comments. There's nobody with us in the room today, but is there anybody on the Zoom meeting for any public comments?
None.
Okay. All right, thank you so much, everybody, for your time. This was a good meeting, but also a very hefty one, so I appreciate your guys' support. The time is 2:16. May I get a motion for adjournment?
Make the motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Thank you, sir. Any objections? Okay, hearing none, motion passes, 2:16, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
So, are you gonna show up?
Yes?